Welcome to this week's episode of the Marianne Hickman Show. Today I have Brian Gault on the show. Now, here's the crazy thing. When I met Brian and his wife, Robin, we were at a big convention together and we started chatting and he looked at me and he said, Marianne, you wouldn't know it, but there was a time in my life when I couldn't make it to my mailbox and back without experiencing this extreme level of fatigue and needed to take a nap. And I was like, Brian, you're kidding me. The person I'm looking at now is full of energy. They're vivacious, they're full of life. You're going to see it when you get to the show. But his story of how to get vulnerable and how to ask for help is one that every entrepreneur needs. I'm excited for you to check it out. We'll see you in the show. So what have you been up to recently? Tell me about life and business. And by the way, when I do podcasts, you probably noticed already, I just roll into it. I record the intro later. I say the
Perfect.
podcast starts in the proverbial hallway. But
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, I've been on the road a ton lately, as you know, traveling 60% of the time. My dad just recently had a pretty kind of scary incident, as I know you can also empathize with my friend. At 81 and a half years old, he fell and broke his hip. But hey, really, really good news. I called him last night on the way home from work, and he's doing well. Robin and I offered to fly out for one more week to help him out with his appointments, to make sure that he could actually do the 100% weight bearing all by himself up and down the stairs because he lives alone safely. But he's like, no, Brian, I'm good to go. Docs just cleared me. I went to my first out of the home outpatient physical therapy appointment today, all on my own. I took my own garbage can down to the end of my driveway.
Deal.
So that was a huge blessing and answer to prayer. I'm so glad that he's in a better place.
Oh my goodness. Me too. That's it. Man, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Hey, listen, I'm about to give you my phone number, so write this down. 801-509-5495. I want you to text me. What questions do you have about the stage or getting on more stages or getting on podcasts? What questions do you have about monetizing your message and bringing in clients? I want to help you make money with your message. So text me 801-509-5495. Let's chat. I remember the first time we met, you told me about getting to your mailbox and back. And it's crazy how the simplest things, when you can't do them, it becomes so monumentally, mentally crippling. And then when you have those wins of being able to do them again, that's a big deal, independent especially.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And then the other two key things that are super right fresh off the top of my mind, my friend, is 2 Fridays ago. Actually, no, just last Friday. Robin and I, get this, we just booked and paid for our round trip airfare tickets to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. We're gone for 9 full days in country in October to Paris, Nice, Monaco, Monte Carlo, and Rome, and like a 1-day train trip, boat trip to the island of Capri off the coast of Amalfi, from Rome. And Paris has been Robin's #1 bucket list destination since he was a little girl or a teen. So like we're both pretty pumped and jazzed about it.
Oh, and you're going to be in Paris in October?
Yes, yes.
That's amazing. That's actually where we're going to be in October as well.
Are you serious? Oh my God. We got to sync up on that date.
If you're on a free trip.
Yeah, no, true. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, you're right. I probably get a little ahead of myself there.
Oh my
That wouldn't be the first time
gosh.
that happened. And then the other thing is I just re-enrolled a dear, wonderful, precious friend of mine, high performer, just re-enrolled her into her second round of 12 coaching sessions this morning. She's like, this girl is kicking butt and taking names, Marianne. She's experienced a 68% overall life satisfaction improvement in 4.5 short months of working together, just 12 coaching sessions. I am so proud of her. She's like, yes, we got to work out the finances, but yes, let's go for another 12.
Oh,
I see the value. I get it. It's been life-changing. And, as a coach, there's nothing more rewarding, right?
it's true. 100% true. That is so neat. And that, Brian, that's actually what I wanted to talk about, because when we met, I was so captivated by your story and where you came from and how you got to where you are and watching you get on stage. And I wanted to, talk about more of those stages, but I would love, for the benefit of the people listening to this podcast, for you to tell your story. Where did you come from that day that it was so hard to get to the mailbox? Take us back there.
Yeah, happy to. So I've been in corporate for a long time. I won't get into the details of my career, but in the cyber and IT space for the last 20 plus years, been a high performance leader, high performing teams for, again, a while now. And I found myself on the road for a 7-day trip. It was actually my first ever Tuesday to Tuesday, full 7-day business trip, being away from my family. I was on the opposite coast, had to do like, you know, 3, 4, 5 different states within 7 days. And I was sitting alone, Marianne, in a hotel. I'll never forget the hotel, Marriott, Dallas, Texas, Gaylord Hotel, eating alone in an Italian restaurant. I was reading Wayne Cordero's book, Leading on Empty. And he's this minister out of Hawaii, suffered from burnout himself, has interviewed hundreds of corporate and nonprofit leaders alike who have also suffered from burnout. And he just described this moment where he went for a run, something he did like all the time. And he came back from his run and he literally sat down on the curb right outside of his house. He lived in the city at the time. And he started crying. He had this breakdown. But when I read those words, it was like a rush of emotion swept over me. And and I just remember thinking to myself, I can't do this anymore. I'm tired of having no energy, no gas left in the tank at the end of the week for my family and friends, let alone myself. I remember thinking, I'm tired of being gone all the time. Like I'm missing out on my daughter's ballet recital. Like how sucky is that?
Mm.
Yeah, I know I get some really cool cards at Father's Day, but like I could be doing a lot more. Like that's what I knew deep down, regardless of what my girls and my wife told me on the Father's Day cards. Like, Brian, you're not all that in a bag of chips. You could be being a lot more present. You could be at the dinner table, not thinking about work, not going back to work for an hour or two on your laptop after dinner's over or after the girls are in bed even. And so I just remembered, yeah, again, my friend thinking something needs to change. And that was the start of my journey. People ask me now all the time, Brian, how'd you beat burnout? How'd you do it? Because that was my second time in 10 years. And to your point, just about energy and not being able to make it down to the mailbox without being winded, it actually got so bad, Marianne. I had to step away for a 2.5 month leave of absence because I literally could not physically or mentally work. I'll never forget this day. I remember walking to my doctor's office. We had just gotten back from a long Labor Day, 3-day weekend. And I had taken my family up to Old Orchard Beach, a popular surfing and ocean hangout spot up here in the Northeast. And my youngest daughter and I, we learned to surf. Family went jet skiing. We did the roller coaster rides. We had so much fun. I got back to work, and within less than 2 weeks, it felt like I needed another vacation.
Oh.
And I walked into my doctor's office, and she goes, Brian, you cannot go back to work. And I was scared. I knew right away that she was like spot on. I knew she was right because I literally could not physically or mentally work or process anything. I was so for Friday, I hit a brick wall, but I was scared. I never remember being more scared in my life. And I said, you know what? I know you're right, but can you give me a few days? She's like, I'll give you a day. I'll give you one day to wrap up things, tell your team, submit the paperwork of HR, and you're done. I'm benching you, Brian, because if I don't bench you now, you may not live. That's how bad it was. It was like stage 4 adrenal. But people throw away people throw around the word burnout very casually,
True.
but there is such a thing as adrenal fatigue, right? Stage 4 is death. I was stage 3. So it
Oh.
was really pretty serious. And that was the beginning of my 2.5 month journey and big, huge, massive midlife crisis and wake up call.
So this is interesting because what you're describing, the word burnout, you're right. I think it gets thrown around a lot and it has varying degrees of intensity when people use it. You can be burned out after a day or after a 2-hour stint of watching the baby by yourself. But you're talking about burnout to the point where it starts to show up on medical charts.
Yes.
Right? This is something, and those that are listening, if you've ever experienced this, tell me about it in the comments. I wanna hear. But this kind of burnout, it's funny because I don't know about you, but I would think, and I used to think for a long time, that anything that physically manifested in a health condition of some kind had to be the result of some physical trauma. right?
Yeah.
It took me a long time to learn, and I'm still learning, that emotional wellness affects physical wellness. If you're feeling burnt out, it's going to manifest in the adrenal fatigue. The adrenal fatigue is not what caused it. It's actually
Right. Yes. Yes.
so how did you go through that experience? How did you, realize that, because when I chatted with you, you didn't tell me all about the medications that you got on that got you better, and you didn't tell me about the pills that were the miracle drug or whatever it was. What was it that really clued you in on this?
Well, it was a huge, massive wake-up call from God. I was laying in my bed on December. So that 2.5 month LOA, Marianne, started mid-October 2018. And at the very beginning of December, I had a key aha moment laying on my bed. But I want to take you back to just one quick moment in time right before that. And at first and foremost, I was starting to blame my company at the time. I was doing the blame game. And the big shift changed for me when I said, you know what, Brian, you screwed up.
Ooh.
Not your company, not your exponential business demands that keep on going up year over year, not the 200x percentage growth that you had in the last 6 to 12 months. You screwed up. And that was a really, really humbling moment for me because outside on paper, everyone, including myself, if I'm being brutally honest, thought I was all good, right? Wife, 3 daughters, good job, great team, house, white picket fence, 3 cars, you know. If you look at my wife and I, like we're both really good looking people. Like she's hot, she's sexy. I'm a handsome man and I'm in at the time, 5 years ago, mid 40s, and we go on family vacation every year for 1 to 2 weeks. Right? I'd preach for pastor when he was gone on vacation. Again, just kind of this false sense of security. And again, if I'm being brutally candid, pride. And so I had to humble myself and realize, you know what? The way I was thinking, believing, and leading was not good, not healthy, and not sustainable. And the real icing on the cake, the thing that really solidified it in my heart, and I know you and Richard and your faith as well, Marianne. And I know many people listening to us will really appreciate and resonate with this as well. I just had one of those aha moments where it was not an audible voice of God, but it was so strong and so clear, the words that I heard in my heart, that it was just as good as God speaking to me. Like I knew that I knew that I knew it was him speaking to my conscious. And he said, Brian, you've overstayed your welcome in tech. And now it's time for you to fulfill my purpose and calling on your life as a minister through being a coach. And if you do not obey me, your life will be ruined. End quote. And the
Okay,
first
that's a
thought that I
big
had,
bump.
right? Right?
And it doesn't even sound like a threat. It just sounds like this is what the natural consequence is gonna be.
Right. Right. And the first thought that I had was, I'm like, you know what, God, thank you for keeping me straight. Thank you for loving me enough to tell me the truth. And my heart was immediately humbled. I immediately received. And from that day on, I began to take a serious inventory. And literally over the span of the next 2 to 3 months, my life radically and 100% changed to where if you asked my closest friends, and most importantly, Robin and the girls, because who you are at home is who you really are. Has this man changed? Is he different? They would absolutely say yes.
So what
But
helped you
that was the
shift?
beginning.
You had your God 2x4 moment or the steamroller moment, right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
if someone else was going through the same thing, what would you say was your instruction manual that you got?
It was 3 things. Number one, I started keeping a gratitude journal because I was so down and depressed. Like the depression was severe and was diagnosed. I had to start seeing a therapist. To your point earlier, that was a side effect. That was
Yeah.
actually a result and a manifestation of the adrenal fatigue. But I had some dark days, my friends. And yet, like, we know each other well enough to know that, like, I'm a pretty happy go lucky person. I'm
Oh,
definitely one
yeah.
of those glass half full. I was in a dark, dark place. Like, I remember crying on the phone to my dear friend Elio, who coached me and helped me and patiently loved me and listened to me more than once when I was having a literal breakdown. So I started writing down 3 things every day before I went to bed that I was thankful for. I'm still doing that 5.5+ years later. I am literally the most joyful person I know. Like, yeah, do I get stressed? Do I worry? Yeah, of course I do, right? Because I'm human. I'm not perfect. I'm still not there. I'm still growing and learning
Yeah, we all
as I
are.
will
We're
be
gonna
till
grow
the
over
day I
wrong.
die.
Yeah.
Right, right. But I am the most joyful person I know. And it's all because I started this gratitude practice. Super simple, quick and easy, but it has reframed my entire world. That was the first thing. The second thing was I got up a lot of courage to do a life assessment. And
What
this took
Tell me
me
what
a
a life
while.
assessment is. Like, is that
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I basically broke down my life into 10 major areas: health, finances, relationships with my family, relationships with my wife, my overall purpose and mission, fun slash hobby, spirit, and like 2 or 3 other areas. And I assigned each area of my life, and a score of 1 to 10. So total perfect potential, right? 100.
okay?
And it took me, and I did it in Brendan Burchard's high performance planner. 15, 20, $25 off Amazon. It's been the number one practical day-to-day tool that I still use now on a daily basis 5.5 years later. But when I first started using it, Marianne, it took me a lot of courage to do this first assessment because I knew my score was going to suck. I
Oh,
knew it
I
was
think
going to be
that's why most
horrible.
people don't do it. Is they're like, I know it sucks, but I don't want to look at it in the face.
Right, right. So I can't remember what my score, but it was either a 48 or a 52. I just don't remember which of those two it was. But it was a 48 or a 52. And I started to simply identify 1 or 2 areas of my life for each of those 10 major areas that I wanted to work on, some sort of mindset shift or new belief or new habit, something in each of those 10 areas that I wanted to do for the next 7 days to make some improvements. And now again, X number of years later, right? 5.5+ years later, that weekly routine of still doing that overall weekly evaluation and looking at just one simple small thing I can do for each of those 10 areas for the next 7 days has been a huge, massive difference maker. Within just 3 or 4 months, my score went from 48 or 52 to consistently being in the 70s. And probably another 3 or 4 months later, consistently, as it still is today, because I am my own worst critic. I've been
Yeah.
very gracious on myself. I know like a lot of high performers can definitely resonate with this. We're our own worst critic. And I am, and I'll never stop being that. But I've learned how to celebrate my wins and be kind to myself and forgive myself when I screw up. So, and I said that because ever since I started that process within 6 to 8 months, and now 5.5+ years later, my score every week, week in and week out, on average is anywhere between 85 and 95. And
Oh,
I live
wow.
a very, very happy, fulfilled, satisfied life today. So that's my second big thing.
I'm gonna make sure that a copy of that journal is in the description of this. I need to take that actual test myself because when I do ratings, I give myself a mental score. I'm like, out of 10, I could hold up 7 fingers, or I could hold up 4 fingers. But I'm interested to see what Burchard's scoring system is and see. Oh, that's a different perspective. Let's see with 2 eyes instead of one.
There you go.
And say, okay, so I'm gonna put that in the description. So let me pivot a little bit because you tell your
Sure.
so well, and you have such a powerful living proof of your methodology and how it works. When we met, you were with me. We were down at the 10X stages, and you're gonna love this. Hope Zvara's podcast with me is airing in a couple of days. So
Yes.
she's
Hope's your girl. Oh my God. I cannot wait to listen to that episode. She rocks. She's the
our
bomb.
boots bumps. She's so awesome. But when we were down there, listening to her speak and Pat Quinn speak and Pete Vargas speak, and we got to hear Grant speak, it was all about getting on stages and taking stages. And it was crazy because after that was within a few weeks, I hadn't planned on starting this podcast, but I did because I wanted to meet people like you and have you on here. And I wanted to give everybody out there an extra stage to be on if they were a good fit. Now, I don't get to say yes to everybody because not everyone's a good fit, but I do get to say yes to some really cool people like you. How has the stage journey been for you? And before you answer that, take me back to the moment when you decided this message is worthy of a stage and I want to get on
Mm.
stage and I feel compelled to share this message with the world. What was that moment like for you?
You know what? I'm so glad you asked that because literally just the other day, I was sitting in a corporate environment in an extended leadership team meeting with top 150 leaders from around the world for this one particular organization. And we were going through this big team building exercise, Marianne. And it was, and we had the opportunity to work in small groups of like 4 to 6. We built bicycles and then we gave the bicycles to elementary school kids.
Oh, wow.
And it was really cool. Like none of us knew or expecting that they were going to walk in the room. And then we got to meet them. They gave us, like, we loved on them. They loved on us. We got to fit their actual bicycle seat height to their body
Oh,
perfectly. It
how
was
cool.
such a cool moment. And you know what? It goes back to your question because this particular facilitator, he stood on the stage and he goes, when I say the word learning and growth, what comes to your mind? And I spoke up, raised my hand, and he called on me and I said, responsibility. And I say that because it's the same answer to your question. I have a responsibility to share my story with the world because if I don't, God forbid on Judgment Day, and I know that might sound a little bit extreme to some, but hey, we're all going to be held accountable and responsible for our actions. And it's not about us, it's about the impact that we have on others. If I can encourage a person, if I can make one person smile, if I can make their day, then who am I to be so arrogant and prideful? If stage fright were an issue for me, which it's not, thankfully and gratefully, I've been on over 2,000 stages. I've had the privilege and joy and honor in a corporate setting of sharing, the corporate message for so long. But if that were an issue to me, and I hope I'm speaking to someone right now, I hope you're hearing my heart, get over yourself because it's not about you. It's about the people that you're called to encourage and bless and change their lives.
That's at the mic drop moment. The get over yourself. I really believe that to be such a true thing. I mean, that was one of the comments that was brought up down when we were at 10X, and I've repeated it over and over, is that stage fright is inherently selfish.
Yes,
It's what about me? What if I mess up? What if I fall on my face? So guess what? It's not about the speaker.
it's
We know
not.
this. So from that moment, as you're sitting in that corporate environment, and you felt this responsibility, and that I love this word because there's a group of people that are not sensitive to their own responsibility.
Mm,
I think that group is growing. I know that group is growing. I've had to reverse gears on some members of that group because I gave birth to some of the people in that group, right? Like this entitlement is the enemy of responsibility.
yes,
And I really feel that to be true. The statue behind me, I keep it with me at all times. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the
I
statue of
can.
responsibility that Viktor Frankl talked about in Man's
Oh
Search.
my God, that's it.
This is the
I
one.
love that.
So this is the help yourself first and then reach down and help another person, which is exactly what you're describing when you said it wasn't even if I felt compelled to. It was like this is why my heart is beating.
Yes,
So
yes.
what from that moment, what took you to your first stage?
I think it was just that heart and that burden and desire to, if I can help other people avoid burnout or recover from it, then I need to do that. Right. I mean, you and I both know from doing it so many times, it is exceedingly incredibly rewarding. I mean, there's not a place where I am more happy, more full of joy than either one or two things. I'm up on a stage, any stage, it doesn't matter what. And when I'm with my immediate family, my wife and my 3 daughters, it doesn't get any more than that. And so, yeah, it's just giving them those practical, actionable tips and habits and principles. Like if they'll do this, if they'll believe this, if they'll think this and do these things on a consistent basis, like they will be more joyful. they will be more confident. They will be more present at the dinner table, and they'll be taking guilt-free time off, right? Just like I'm so fed up with everybody wearing busyness as their badge.
Oh,
I, it's an epidemic, my friend. And if I can help that epidemic go in the reverse direction, then sign me up. Again, it's my responsibility to do so. I hope that answered your question.
no, I love that. I think busy is one of the worst four-letter words that we can adopt. People can call me every dirty name in the book and I won't be offended, but if you call me busy, ooh, that
Yes,
pushes my buttons. I get triggered with that because that is an indicator to me that I'm being irresponsible with my priorities.
that is so good. I've actually never heard it that way, but I love that perspective. That is a profound, powerful perspective.
Ugh,
Being
stop the glorification.
irresponsible. Yeah, I'm sorry. Say that one more time. That was so
Oh,
good.
it stopped the glorification of busy, or in other words, busyness is telling me that I'm irresponsible with my priorities because it's not about time. It's never about time. If it was about time, the
Agreed.
wealthy people would have more of it, and they just don't.
Right. Right. Yes.
And
So
it
true.
oh, okay, so your stages, you're touring, you're speaking in high corporate America. Where do you see yourself going next?
My heart and desire is to be 100% out of corporate and coaching and speaking full time.
Oh, that's so exciting. So that's a big leap for a lot of people. I know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs and coaches that use the 9 to 5 and are, bless their hearts, are W-2s. And there's employees that should not be employees, they should be entrepreneurs. And there are frankly some entrepreneurs that should go back to being employees. I
Yes.
100% believe that. But it's a scary thing to make the switch either direction. We've made the switch from 9 to 5 to sometimes people call it the 9 to 9. Congrats, you're an entrepreneur, you're working all the time now. But you're using your own materials to build your own empire, which is what's so beautiful about it. Just like with the studio that we're building downstairs.
Yes.
What is the scariest part of facing that wall? There's a lot of security that I'm sure Robin is looking at. There's a lot of what ifs. What is the big thing that's making that so challenging right now?
Right now, so I would say two things immediately come to mind. I think the biggest scary fear and security perspective, especially being a man who loves his family so passionately, is provision. Just being able to replace that standard 9 to 5, 9 to 6 income and continue to maintain the quality of life. To me, it's never about the amount, but it is about quality. I don't look at things as expenses. I generally tend to look at, and I think you'll really be able, again, I think so many people listening will be able to relate to this. I look at things as investments. So for example, every year our family loves to go on vacation. That vacation, generally speaking, right? Most years on average, right? Let's say it's 3 to 7K, right? Somewhere in that neighborhood with the VRBO, the fun, the round trip airfare for 5 people, right? But it's never an expense for me. It's always an investment. So I do tend to look at things from that perspective. So yeah, it's definitely being able to replace that income. And then the second part of your question, like what's the biggest challenge right now? It's carving out enough time and energy and telling my own self, like getting over my own self-deception and the lie that I don't have enough time and I don't have enough energy. That's still very much a work in progress for me, believing and thinking and speaking that I do have enough time and energy, that God's grace is sufficient for me. I have the same amount of time that everybody else has been given on this earth. And that with the right strategic effort, with my efforts and my work, tasks, projects, right? Strategic, tactical, put in the right place with the right people at the right time, the right opportunities, that transition will ultimately be a success, which deep down I do believe. Like I'm 1,000% convinced. I know it will be, but it's already taken way longer than expected or anticipated, which again, I think is another thing that so many of us can relate to and empathize with.
Oh, 100%. I think we all fight that battle. And gosh, man, if I could go back in time and learn all the lessons that God wanted me to learn without having to be steamrolled, I would.
Yes, right? Sign me up, baby.
The steamroller is exactly what we get sometimes, and it's a blessing and a curse. It doesn't feel good. It's not fun. I once saw this comedian. Maybe he was not meaning to be a comedian, but I thought he was funny. I think actually he was a pastor who was speaking, and he was doing a. No, it's been so long since I saw the video. I can't remember if he was pantomiming by himself or if he had a guest on the stage that he was speaking back and forth this dialogue with. But there was a person standing in the middle of the stage, and then this other person with a hammer and chisel chiseling away at his shoulders and chiseling away at his hands and sculpting, essentially.
Yes.
And the sculptor was talking about all the beauty and like, "I can't wait for you to see this." And then suddenly the person getting sculpted goes, "Oh, that one hurt." And the sculptor was like, "Well, of course it did. It didn't belong."
Oh, oh, that's so good.
And he said, in order, he went on, and I wish I should find this video and post it on my channel. But essentially, the sculptor said, in order for me to reveal you, not even make you, but reveal you as everything you're supposed to be, we have to get rid of things that you thought were part of you that aren't.
Mm, mm. Yeah,
And it's the
that's
same
so
thing that
good.
Michelangelo and the greats said when they would sculpt out of marble. He said that the statue's already in there. I just have to go find it. And I'm getting goosebumps, bro. Like sometimes it hurts so bad
Yes.
sculpted, but it's because we're holding on to things that don't belong.
Yes, yes, and the other thing that comes to mind, my friend, when I listen to you share that analogy is I'm oftentimes reminded of the glacier and how much bigger the surface area and the mass, i.e., the impact, the volume, the weight is of that iceberg under the surface versus what you see on top of it. If you're taking that Alaska cruise, for example.
Mhm.
And I think that's such a great, powerful example because so many of us, we do have these huge, massive hearts, tremendous purpose, tremendous calling, so many gifts and skills and talents. And yet, by definition, right, there's a very different calling in life for an oak tree versus a rose bush.
So true.
And when you're that bigger oak tree versus rose bush or a bigger iceberg versus a smaller iceberg, that preparation time, that building and solidifying of the foundation, the inside stuff that no one sees, but your own heart and mind, you got to go through some stuff so that you're ready when all the birds land on your branches. If you're that oak tree, you got to then you'll be ready to support that weight and bear that responsibility. But if you get sent out too soon, too quick, i.e., you're not ready, you're not prepared, and you're only a maple tree sapling when you should be that full blown mature oak tree, then you can get hurt. That's where character issues come into play. Others can get hurt if you let down them and disappoint them. I know I'm waxing philosophical here a little bit, but
I
yeah,
love it.
preparation time is never wasted time. And it goes back to your point of being willing to go through that pain, that uncomfortableness, if you will, if that's even a word, because the greater purpose and responsibility of impacting more people in a deeper, more profound way is ultimately worth it.
The sucky part of life is just the epic part of your story. And that it is what you make it. I won't say that part for everybody because there are people that take the sucky parts of their lives and they continue to plummet downward and they continue to be married to the chaos and they continue to
Yes.
victimhood. And it does take an extraordinary individual. I'm a pilot and one of the things that we are have to know about our airplane is how much strength the wings can withstand. So if you're
Yes.
diving and you
Mhm.
pull up, are your wings gonna rip off your fuselage, right?
Right. Right.
So much strength. I'll never forget the moment I was
Mm.
in training and I'm in this little katana, this tiny little airplane. My brother's my flight instructor. He's sitting next to me, but I'm flying the plane. And we had a crosswind hitting us pretty hard. And I'm 5'2", and I've got some muscle, but not as much as my brother, who's bigger and stronger than I am. And I'm pushing my feet into the rudders of the plane, trying to nose against or into the crab wind to keep us flying straight. I have to go into the wind to make. I'm like pushing my tripod as I'm doing this, and I have to push and push and push because it's my muscle that's pushing on the rudder to get the plane to adjust. And I look over at my brother, he's seeing me kind of start to fatigue. And it was crazy for me to internalize it's not a machine that's doing the work. I have to muscle the plane into flying the right direction. And I eventually had to say, I have to give you the flight controls because I'm not strong enough yet.
Yes.
I don't know how to do this yet. Can you be with me? And that's the key to mentorship. If I was up in that plane alone, I might never have come down in one piece.
Wow. Wow. I thank you for sharing that story. I love that story because I think for so many people, they do get burned out because they're too prideful to ask for help and they
I've
don't
been there.
recognize. Yeah, same, absolutely. And that's what led to my burnout. Like I was a yes person. I was a people pleaser. Like who doesn't love to be the person that people go to when they need something? Like
Yeah.
that's very fulfilling. That's very rewarding, especially if you have a pure heart motive and you really like helping people. Okay. You're not in it for the accolades. You're not in it for the resume, right? You don't care what your title is. Um, and then that's a whole nother lesson in side story, right? But back to your point, like, hey, can we just be humble enough to ask for help when we need it? Right? We have not because we ask not. Every single major breakthrough that's come through in my life, Marianne, every single one. Like I can't tell you how many times in the last 6 months I've thought about this one principle alone. Every single major breakthrough in my life has been because I've been transparent and vulnerable with a trusted friend or family member.
Ooh, that's worth writing down. I've been taking a bunch of notes as we've been going, by the way. Like, I love these gold nuggets.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And as we were talking about a few minutes ago, right? They're not all one the easy, rosy, pleasant, pleasing, easy peasy way, right? We do have to go through some stuff to learn this stuff, unfortunately.
Well, I think that's the best way though. And it's easy to talk about it when, oh gosh, when you're not in the middle of it, when you're not in the darkness, then it's easier to talk about it. When you're in the dark and you're hiding under the covers and you're curled up in a corner, that's when it's hard. That's
Yes.
when it's hard to say I need to be vulnerable because that is, gosh, if anyone's listening to this right now and you are in the bottom of the valley or at the bottom of the pool and whatever your version of darkness looks like, what would you say to that person, Brian, if they're listening to this and they're currently at the bottom?
I would say reach out for help. Reach out for help. I cannot tell you how many people over the years, over the decades have said, you know what, Brian, my breakthrough began. I was at my worst point, but when I started talking about it, when I started opening up about it, because there's this really powerful truth of darkness and light. And when things are all internalized, it can be very dark. Why? Because it's all very inward focused. But if you think about the light versus dark analogy, right? If we're both here in our offices here at home today, and if we walk into our office in the pitch black middle of the night, all we have to do is flick on one light. And the moment we flick on that light at 196,000 miles per second, that light dispels the darkness. And the analogy here is that when we open up, when we're vulnerable, when we're transparent, when we talk about it, tell a trusted friend who will love us unconditionally, right? I mean, we got to be careful about who we tell our business to. But when we confide in the right people, the people who love us unconditionally, by the way, that also includes loving you enough to tell you to get your crap straight and pull your head out of your butt, right? Because most people at the same time need a pat on the back and a kick in the butt. I know that's true of me.
I love that
You know,
visual.
right? It's not kind to let somebody with a shaving cut on their legs or on their mustache. That's not kind to let a fellow woman or man know that they've got a cut on their legs or their mustache and they're bleeding and they're walking up on stage. To not let them know about that, that's not kind. That's rude. That's selfish. So you need somebody who will love you unconditionally, right? To pat you on the back and to listen to you, to empathize and to kick you in the butt, right? We need all of that. But just have the courage. Take a risk, my friends. Take a risk and tell someone, talk about it. And I can't remember who the person was, but you and I are both uh, podcast junkies, right? That's a positive thing. We both love to learn. We both love to grow. I was listening to some podcast a number of years ago, within the last 2 or 3 years, and I don't remember the person's name, but I remember the power of their story.
Mhm.
And this person was severely depressed to the point of being suicidal. And one person, I'm actually thinking about two different stories here. One person started journaling, and another person just started talking about all of their past childhood traumas and abuse and neglect and abandonment. And oh, by the way, I can raise my hand on that too. Right? I think so many of us can. But those things no longer have a power over me. Let me just give you one super quick personal example. Like my biological mom abandoned me and my younger sister when I was 5 and she was 3. And she chose our abusive, physically and mentally abusive alcoholic dad, stepdad, over her son and her daughter, ages 5 and ages 3 at the time. And she drove us to our grandparents' farm in Southern Virginia, Civil War area, farm, and dropped us off. Right? I can say that, Mary Beth. You don't, Mary. I'm so sorry. I don't know how I just spaced your name. I apologize. But Marianne, like you're looking in my eyes right now. I know we're only on audio to our podcast listeners, but we're looking at each other. There's no sadness in my eye. Like that doesn't have any negative pull or drama or trauma effect or impact on me. Why? Well, number one, I forgave, but I've also talked about it so many times that it's lost its grip on me.
Yes.
And that is what I learned from that second podcast. Similar story, a lot of past trauma and abuse. And for this one person, it was very uncomfortable for them to talk about it. But they purposefully did it to where now, X number of years later, they've done it hundreds of times. And now it has no more darkness or stronghold or pull or weight on them anymore.
I think that's so beautiful. And even in terms of speaking and presenting, I have seen many a speaker share their stories before the darkness is gone. They're not healed from the wounds that they're trying to
Mm,
get out. And for me personally, as an audience member, they don't have the right to be sharing that story yet because they can't teach me if they're not healed.
mm,
So
yes.
when you get on stage, you can see it in your eyes, like you were saying. You're on the other side of it. I can tell energetically, visually, audio, you're on the other side, and therefore you've earned the right to reach down your hand and lift up somebody else. So, Brian, where can people find you if they want to be more a part of your universe, if they want to talk to you about how they feel like they're stuck or overwhelmed? How can they find you?
Yeah. I'm happy to help. Thank you so much. I definitely appreciate the question. Just pulling up my details right now. So you can go to tinyurl.com. I made this super, super easy. tinyurl.com/HP dash 5 keys.
Okay.
HP
Will you
dash 5
text that
keys.
to me? Because I will put it in the description of the podcast so people can check that out and go follow you and see what you're all about. I get your morning newsletters every day. I highly recommend everybody else do the same thing. It's just a little bit of sunshine every morning. But Brian, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for being part of the podcast today, and I can't wait to see you on your next stage.
Yeah, my pleasure. My joy, Marianne. Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And of course, make sure you text me just directly with whatever questions you have about building your brand. You want to build your signature keynote presentation. Maybe you're at the stage where you need to get your ebook out and you need to help writing that. Let's do it all. Whatever you have questions with, wherever you're stuck, just text me 801-509-5495. Let's get this underway and make you some money with your message.